Hotep, and welcome to the African History Classroom. And I'm your host, Professor Hicks. And I thought today I'd start you out with some wonderful African Santeria music featured from one of our Igbo, Yoruba, and Santeria mixtures or admixtures to bring our culture in front of us in fruition. Asheo! What you looking at? What are you looking at, folks? What is that symbol in front of you? That's Sankofa. Yes, Sankofa. And just to add on, I put on my Sankofa hoodie to make it just right. Sankofa, what does it mean, folks? How many people are aware of the meaning, the symbolic meanings in their culture? You know, when Africans first began to write, to express literature, they did it in symbols. Now, they didn't do it in symbols just to help us. You know, we have to remember these Africans were super duper intelligent. Probably some of the most intelligent beings that ever set foot on the planet Earth. And as such, much of their knowledge had to be kept in a secretive form because the masses were not ready to understand these types of concepts, and as you would explain them in a what you would call literal sense. So they put it in a symbolic sense so that people could look at a symbol and know exactly what it means. What do you mean by that, Professor Hicks? Well, I'll give you a quick example. Many of you might drive your car, and as you're driving along the highway, you see a couple of symbols. One symbol reads to you, stop. You see the red, you see the octagon shape, and you know that means to stop. Another symbol just points an arrow, leading you off a road. You know exactly what that means because the arrow has been ingrained into you as a symbol to get off the road. Well, Africans are the ones who developed this form of knowledge and communication. And as such, everything they did, they put it symbolically. Ergo, the metal netcher, for those who might be familiar with that, it is in a symbolic form, and it tells us our stories. All right, so when you see symbols, next time you see a symbol, a stop sign, whatever it may be, remember your ancestors developed that form of communication because a lot of the information just wasn't for all the masses. It's one of the things I have a little thing when I was teaching. I would always be upset that even my wife, who was a principal, would demand that all students become college-bound students. Well, I have a different philosophy in that because I believe there are those who are college-bound and there are those who are traditionally role-bound, meaning there's something you do very, very well besides go to college and pontificate. So the Africans, and particularly those in Egypt, but the African intellectuals understood this very well. And they understood that knowledge wasn't for everyone. But he did understand that that knowledge was so important that somehow it must be disseminated amongst the masses. And as such, they created something called symbols. Pretty ingenious, huh? That's why you have to learn to love yourself, because we started everything. All right, very good. So again, Hotep, and I hope today is working out for you well. I'm drinking some super duper coffee that my wife made for me, and boy is it good. I'm ready to zip around here. So you see the symbol in front of you called Sankofa symbol. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But as I promised you for this particular series of broadcasts, I will be reading from Dr. Joy DeGruy. Let me show you her book. I know I've done it several times, but I have to continue to do it. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. And in this book, which was groundbreaking at the time, why was it groundbreaking, Professor Hicks? It was groundbreaking because for the first time, one of our clinicians, one of our medical professionals, began to link our present behavior with that of slavery. To moreover, she began to link the post traumatic or trauma, slave, and the accompanying attendance with that. She began to connect that to slave oppression, abuses, and repressions. She began to connect that the behaviors of today to the slave experiences of yesterday. Not only did she do it in regards to us, because that was her most important goal, but she also showed us through this book how it infected the enslavers. We all know that our perspective of slavery has been taught and told and re-examined and analyzed over and over again. But how about the psychological effects on the enslaved and the enslaver? Well, this is what made her book groundbreaking, because she took those behaviors, codified them into a particular meaning, and called it PTSS. And we're going to get into that in a moment. But before we go there, let me read you the prologue from her experience in South Africa. Now, one of the motivations to this book was that she went to South Africa. And after seeing how culturally we behave there and compared it to what happened when she returned back to the United States, I believe what might have been the impetus for this book. But whether it is or not, let me read you from the prologue. Kaserian Ngera. Kaserian Ngera. And how are the children? Among the most accomplished and fabled tribes in Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It is perhaps surprising then to learn the traditional greeting that passed between Maasai warriors. Kaserian Ngera, one would always say to another. It means, and how are the children? It is still the traditional greeting among the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that the Maasai always placed on their children. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer, all the children are well. Meaning, of course, that peace and safety prevailed, that the priorities of protecting the young, the powerless are in place, that Maasai society has not forgotten its reason for being, its proper function and responsibility. All the children are well means that life is good. It means that the daily struggles of existence, even among a poor people, do not preclude proper caring for its young. I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took the greeting with each other the same daily question, and that is, how are the children? I wonder if we heard the question and passed it along to each other a dozen times a day. If it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how our children are thought of or cared for in this country. I wonder if we could truly say without hesitation, the children are well. Yes, all the children are well. This was excerpted from a speech by the Reverend Dr. Patrick T. O'Neill of the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Framingham, Massachusetts. All right. So, how are the children? How are your children? Hopefully they are well. Hopefully they are safe. Okay. So I believe such a greeting would do us much benefit, particularly in today's society and the craziness that we are seem to be engulfed in with our current king. All right, I continue. And this is from Dr. DeGura. This is a prologue. Throughout the recorded history, and I'm sorry, let me preclude this by saying that, or announcing that, for those who are interested, this particular broadcast will be mostly reading and summarizing from a book. So it won't be as engaging as some of the less broadcasts I've had. So if you're interested, please tune in. But if not, please tune out, because this is going to be more on the line of a really thorough intellectual discussion about our condition and the condition of the enslaver. So again, I'll be reading mostly today, and I hope that you appreciate it. So throughout recorded history, people have subjugated, enslaved, at times even exterminated one another. Sometimes these acts were committed in the name of a king or a queen, other times in the name of a tribe or country. Often they were committed in the name of God. Always they were done to consolidate and expand power of a select few. Always vast numbers of people died for no good reason. Always even a greater number of people needlessly suffered to sate the appetites, or to sate, S-A-T-E, sate the appetites of a select group. These crimes against humanity and these crimes continue to be executed across our planet to this day, as we all know and all can see. These crimes are perpetrated, in a seemingly never-ending cycle. The powerless oppress the less powerful, who in turn oppress those who are less powerful than they. These cycles of oppression leave scars on the victims and the victors alike. Scars that embed themselves in the collective psyches and are passed down through generations, robbing us of our own humanity. For who can be truly human under the weight of such oppression? Oppression that condemns them to a life of torment, robs them of a future, and saps their free will. Moreover, who can become truly human when they gain so much from the pain and suffering of those whom they oppress and or take advantage of? Many say these conditions are part of the parcel of the human condition. I don't believe that. Perhaps they are. But every so often that Gandhi or Mandela graces our planet and helps their people to break the cycle for just a small time. The time has now come to follow their lead, break the cycle, and once again claim our humanity. Breaking this cycle and claiming our humanity will require much work from all of us. Those who have been victims of years, decades, and centuries of oppression, first must heal. Yes, we must heal from the injuries first received, as well as passed down through the ages. Those who have been perpetrators of these unspeakable crimes, and those who continue to benefit from those crimes, have to honestly confront their deeds and heal from the psychic wounds that come with being the cause and the beneficiaries of such great pain and suffering. The work to be done in particular to each cultural group, whether the group's culture arose somewhere in Africa or Europe or the Americas, Asia or the Pacific Islands, and whether the group members were victims or perpetrators or both. The nature of this work is such that each group must see their own healing, because no group can do another's work. With this understanding, I have dedicated my life in helping children of the African diaspora, particularly those whose history is wrapped up in the history of America. Hence the book before you. No, all children are not well yet, but yes, they can be. Dr. Joy DeGroot. She opens her introduction with the picture of what you're looking at before you. Sankofa symbol. What does it mean, folks? Listen. The Sankofa symbol means return and get it. Look at the image. Here you see a bird with its neck twisted backwards, pecking or picking on some object. This is symbolic, like our ancestors always have done, give us messages through symbols. With the neck turning back and it retrieving some object is a sign or symbol trying to communicate to us that in order for you to go forward, you must return back and learn the traditions and histories of the past. Any group of people moving forward, advancing themselves in achievements, uses their past traditions as a guide rail, a guideline, or a goal for the future. We as Africans, particularly African Americans, must do the same. We must look at this symbol, understand it, and make it realize, manifest itself in our behaviors every day in returning to the past or looking to the past to gain a recognition for the future. Sankofa. We must return and claim our past in order to move forward our future. It is an understanding who we were that will free us to embrace who we now are. That is the meaning of Sankofa. Asheo. Ashe. All right, folks, there we go. Now, if you didn't know before, you know now. What's that, the rap second? That rap record? If you didn't know before, you know now. All right, let's get back to it. All right, how far are we? We're 18 minutes. Not gonna be no hour today, folks. So let's talk about Dr. DeGoy. DeGur. Yes, Dr. DeGur. I hope I didn't screw up her name. So I'm going to read you an incident, all right, about Dr. DeGur's experience when she returned back from Africa. I had a similar experience when I returned back from Africa. Unfortunately, when I returned back from Africa that first day, I found myself in the hospital from dehydration, COVID, and a few other things. I had such a great trip in Egypt and Sudan that I had psychologically steered myself towards ensuring that I didn't get sick like a lot of people did on that trip. I didn't think I had COVID when I came back to the United States, but I did. I didn't think I was exhausted when I came back to the United States, but I was. And all of that I was able to psychologically put in the back of my mind so that I can enjoy this educational experience in Egypt. I must say that again. Unlike Dr. DeGur, her visit seems to be one of cultural reassimilation or cultural learning. My trip was totally for educational purposes. All right, so there was little time to really enjoy the ambiance of Egypt and Africa because I was there to learn. I am a student of history, therefore I had to sacrifice some of my social endeavors while I was in Africa. But she talks about the differences. She's comparing her experiences of being in Africa, coming home from Africa, and now back in the United States. So she's going to talk about several incidents, and I'm just going to identify really one incident, and this incident was with her son. And it gives us a really good idea of where our young people are, particularly compared to some African people or African kids. And it also gives us an idea about how she felt, because I kind of felt that way. But again, you know, I was kind of incapacitated when I came back from Africa, so I didn't have a chance to sit back and feel exactly what she did. But I did have a sense of it. So here's her story. And we're going to do about 2 pages of this, and I'm going to stop and talk about it, okay? In the summer of 1994, her and her sister, or my sister, my niece, and I were among 9 African-American women that traveled to Southern Africa together. Upon my return, I found it difficult to adjust to being back in Portland. I can agree with that. I did have that sense of trying to gain back my sense of being in America again. That was tough. So again, she found it difficult being back in Portland, Oregon, a city once touted as being the whitest city in America. Yeah, I remember hearing that as a child. Her 6 week journey, my 6 week journey throughout Southern Africa, had left an indelible mark on my heart and my soul. I sat in my living room reminiscing about the villages in Lesotho, the sweetness of the children, their level of generosity, and their well-mannered behavior. We were, we were always treated kindly and offered food and drink, even when there was barely enough for one person, let alone guests. This reminded me of how my mother used to always feel and seemed to always feel of food, feed the whole entire neighborhood with little or nothing. She taught my brothers and I that there was always enough food to share. And I can sort of feel that and understand where she's coming from because my mother did the same, and so does my wife. My wife feeds the whole community and still does. Now I was back home trying to reassimilate into my daily routines. My difficulty in achieving this caused considerable concern among some of the women who were on the trip with me. They began calling my sister and asking, why has Joy not left the house yet? My many years as a mental health clinician at least assured me that I wasn't nuts. I simply needed time to adjust to having been in a place where, for the first time, it felt perfectly normal to be black. I can concur with that because that's how it felt in Egypt. It felt odd returning to America, to a place where being black is frequently a life sentence of cultural isolation and social invisibility. Yeah, folks, don't we feel like that many times as we peruse ourselves through this country? My reminiscing was abruptly cut short when my 9-year-old daughter came racing into the room. She was out of breath and quite panicked about a situation that was happening outside in front of her house. "There's a boy outside," she said, "who's threatening to beat up Nadim." Of course, it was her brother. "And he says he's going to pee on your car too." She said, well, I was finally going to have to get out of the house. I walked out into the scene of several young black boys standing in the middle of the street. They looked to be around 10 or 11 years old. They were facing my son, they were facing my son, who stood alone. I identified the boys standing directly in front of my son as the instigator and asked, "Is there something that my son has done that you would like to tell me about?" The young, rather stout and angry little boy responded, "What's he staring at?" "Excuse me," I said. "What did you say?" And the boy repeated, "I want to know what he's staring at. Does he got some kind of eyeball problem?" How many times have we heard that? I was a little startled, but I managed to ask the young man, "Are you sure you're saying to me that you want to beat my son into the ground because he was looking at you?" The young man seemed a bit uneasy with my question, hesitated, and responded, "Yeah. Who's he think he's looking at?" I paused for a moment considering what he had said and then responded, "My son may have been looking at you because he thought that you might want to play basketball. In front of our house we have a hoop. He may have been looking at you because he was thinking of asking you if you would like to play one of his video games in the house. He could have been looking at you because he thought that maybe you might want to walk down the street to the park." The little boy looked to be rather overwhelmed by my statements, as if to say, "Ooh, lady, it's a little too deep." Well, I guess it was the therapist in me that got out of control. I eventually managed to settle things down by giving the boys my canned spiel, explaining how important it is for African Americans living in the hood not to fight and to keep each other safe. He seemed to buy it enough to agree not to beat up my son, much to Nadim's relief. After the boys walked away, it dawned on me that there was a stark contrast between this experience and the ones in South Africa, where the young African males greeted each other with a common phrase, I see you. I couldn't help feeling the emotional distance that separated the two statements. The friendly acknowledgement that I see you, and the angry, menacing, what you looking at. The gap between Africans and African Americans was suddenly stark and clear. Somewhere along the way, African American children have become so emotionally fragile that they cannot often withstand the implications associated with a simple gaze. I went back inside and continued thinking about what had just happened. As I sat in my living room, I recalled other incidents that at the time had thought to be nothing out of the ordinary. So she thought about these incidents that normally would be out of the ordinary. And considering how we as humans arrive at our self-concept and self-esteem, this statement sums up the role that significant others play in our sense of worth. I want to read that again. And considering how we as humans arrive at our self-concept or our self-esteem, this following statement sums up the role that significant others play in our sense of worth. And that is, I am not who I think that I am, and I am not who you think that I am. I am who I think that you think that I am. Let that simmer for a while. What has happened to this little boy's ego and integrity? And why was he so mad at my son? Who is black? Who is black just like him? My belief is that the little boy does not hold the same anger towards white people because they do not know who he is, nor can they really see who he is. He was, however, mad at black people, like my son, who can see the emptiness in him, who can see his vacant esteem. His question, what you looking at, implied that whatever he thought that my son was looking at was worthy of him beating Nadine bloody for it. And let me stop right here. All right, it's a lot to ingest. We're going to stop right there. The beating, the looking at each other, the stare, what are you looking at? How many times, folks, have we seen this in our communities? Someone stepping on someone's toe. Yo, what you stepping on my toe? What you looking at? Why you staring at me? What is this all about? Well, this is what Dr. DeGruy is trying to get us to understand throughout this book. How are the antecedents of slavery impacting us today? And not only impacting us, but impacting the enslaver, the slave master, or white racist society in general. How does the past slave behaviors that we had to use to protect us, how do the past behaviors that we had to use to maintain our safety, how do the behaviors that we use to maintain the safety, protection of our children, how do they act today? How do they manifest themselves today in today's world? This is what happened with Dr. DeGruy and her son. We saw two different children behaving based on their shaping in American society. That's what this book is going to reveal to you. What happened between Nadine and the stranger? Well, first of all, the self-concept has been injured. The self-concept has been injured. How does that happen? The adjustment from an African culture to an American culture was a transition fraught with oppression, fraught with anger and danger, fraught with trauma, fraught with trauma. What is trauma? How did this trauma affect us? The adjustment from an African culture to an American culture has led us on a path of behaviors that we don't understand ourselves. Sometimes people, I shouldn't say people, African Americans are engaging in behaviors that sometimes when it's over, we wonder why and how did we get there. We need to begin to believe and understand these behaviors are things that we have taken with us from the past that are part of transgenerational communication, epigenetics, socialization, and all forms of psychological psychopathy. And we're going to give you some definitions to these terms that I'm throwing around because I don't throw around these terms without giving them what they mean. So we're going to go through them. But I want you to remember trauma, very important to this discussion. What happened between these two boys? What happened to the self concept of the stranger? What was his sense of self worth? How is it that another young man looking at him leads him to want to beat that person down? The boy thinks that Nadim can see his sense of self worth. The stranger is looking at Dr. DeGroy's son, and he thinks that the son can see him. He thinks, moreover, because he knows it's a black child, that the son might have experienced the same thing he does. Why the son is not reacting on the same level or showing the same behaviors as he is what has got the strange boy looking at Dr. DeGroy's son like he's insane. When the insane behavior is a part of the stranger. He cannot understand his own behavior in himself, but in order to keep up the stereotype that he's been taught to live up to, in order to keep up the protection and the defenses of himself, he has to ask a young man, what are you looking at? Now let's take off on this a bit. What if Dr. DeGroy's son might have said, I'm looking at an empty, no good clown? What do you think the stranger's reaction would have been? Of course, we can right away say there probably would have been a fight, but why would he have engaged in a fight? Was he defending himself from these remarks that truly he probably believed about himself? Or was it some untold aggression that has been instilled in him since he has been a part of the American society? Who am I? Am I not who I think I am? Did he not think about who he was? Am I who I think I am? And as he looked at the Dr. DeGroy's son, he said to himself, am I not who you think I am? Am I not who you think I am? In other words, while you're looking at me, kid, are you seeing the emptiness in me? Is that really who I am? Because I am not sure. And then finally, the final question is, am I who I think that you think I am? Am I who you think that I think I'm? So in other words, do I think like you think, or do you think like I think that I am worthless? Does what you see as you look at me is the same as what I see when I get up in the morning and look at me? And this portends for us to begin to think and understand that our kids, in general, have a very low self-esteem. We have a very low sense of self-worth, our kids. And unfortunately, they grow up with this deficit. This is another manifestation of the slave syndrome. This is not the young boy's fault. This you cannot say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get it together, son. This type of behavior needs healing. It needs attention. But we know in this society, healing and attention is not something that this society believes black people should get. The boy thinks Nadim can see the sense of self-worth in that he sees in himself this self-worth or lack of same in himself. The threat is, in conclusion, the threat is Nadim seeing this self-worth and subsequently knows that the boy does not have a sense of this self-worth. So the implication from the young man is that this being called me does not like who I am, and does this boy like who I am, because I look at him and see me and I don't like him because I don't like me. This is a very complex thing, folks. That's why I told you from the beginning. This is complex behavior that we don't take the time to consider. This young boy grew up to be a man, and with these same behaviors, I'm sure, and exhibits these behaviors, displays or demonstrates these behaviors in a very maladaptive, unhealthy way. For us not to begin, as Dr. DeGruy has tried, to begin to resolve these issues within ourselves and then with society at large, dooms us to a life of debauchery. Of all the broadcasts I've done, this and maybe one other are more important to our psyche and our well-being than anything else. This book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, is a book, is our psychology book. It begins to tell us that many of the things that we're doing that we're not conscious of doing and that we turn around later and say, why did I do that, are wrapped in the legacy of slavery and all its attendants. Okay. All right. Let's stop for a moment. And there's another incident that I wanted to go over, but I'm going to hold it right there. And I'm going to summarize quickly for you. In summary, the angry little boy is threatened by a glance are issues of skin color and issues of hair texture. You know that the white girls would want to have straight hair like the white girls. The excessive focus on material accumulation that we have been doing. People needing, wanting, and dreaming, yet fearing they will not succeed. Most of all, frustration and anger, at times even rage, feelings that seem to dominate many of our lives all the time. If you're black and living in America, none of this may be news to you. Contemporary social scientists might offer an explanation as to the boy's behavior by saying that, like many black scholars might say it's the music. They might suggest that television, newspapers, and magazines projecting negative images of black males as a pitiable, ignorant, violent, and criminal have contributed to the overall poor self-image and self-esteem of black boys. Probably right. Black scholars might even point out that music videos, and movies depicting masculine and feminine beauty neatly wrapped in fine white feathers and straight hair have further deteriorated the self-image of black boys and girls, causing them to despise the reflection in the mirror. And they would be right. However, what is not often addressed is the role our history has played in producing these negative perceptions. Yes, not only these negative perceptions, but these images and their behaviors. We rarely look to our history to understand how African Americans adapted their behavior over centuries in order to survive the stifling effects of chattel slavery, effects which are evident today. I believe that the behaviors in the scenarios described, the one with the son and the stranger, as well as many others, are in large part related to the transgenerational adaptations associated with past traumas of slavery and the ongoing oppression. The ongoing oppression. She has termed this condition post traumatic slave syndrome, or PTSS. Okay, folks, we're going to stop there. For those who are interested, we're in the Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome book of Dr. Gruer. We are on page 14. If you plan to buy the book and you want to keep up with me, I'm going to go in order. The next topic we're going to talk about tomorrow is trauma, and I'm going to be doing the same thing, sort of reading and doing a paraphrasing and summary of what she's saying. And we're going to try to maybe get to all the way to trauma, which is in the middle of the book, but I'm going to be skipping and dancing around. All of this is in the context of the American Revolution and its signing of the Declaration of Independence. We're trying to formulate how and what were our roles and how and cause and effect of our roles as it relates to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. What causes and effect did we have in that? What our roles were, because as I've mentioned time and again, on July 2026, July 4th of 2026, they will be celebrating the quincentennial, the semi-quincentennial, 250 years of America's Union based on the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And as such, I want our part to be placed in this. So here we're talking about slavery as it relates to the psychopathic behaviors that are attending our behavior today, based on our enslavement 300 years ago, how that has affected us, how it has affected the enslaver. And we also want to culminate this discussion, long-term discussion, on how and what it relates to, how it relates, and what relationship it has with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And with that said, folks, I'm going to say Ashe. And don't forget Sankofa. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. And again, Ashe, and have a wonderful